Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about translating, or we better know it as slide. Now, we have a few reminders before we start translating things. We remember that the figure before the transformation is called the pre-image. We label that pre-image with letters, so for example, triangle ABC. After we apply the transformation, we use the symbol with this little dash. Kind of looks like a apostrophe, but it's going to be straight up and down. When we read this symbol, we call it prime. For example, triangle A prime, B prime, C prime. Let's take a look at example A. In example A, it says the pre-image of PQR is shown on the coordinate plane. Draw a translation, right 3 units and down 4 units, and label that image P prime, Q prime, R prime. So taking a look at my triangle, I know I'm going to translate each one of those points to the right 3 and down 4. To do that, I'm going to just count using the coordinate plane. Later, we'll talk about a method to do it when we don't have the coordinate plane, but seeing as we have it here, we might as well use it. So I'm going to start with coordinate P, and I'm going to count 3 units to the right and down 4 units. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 units to the right, and then I'm going to go down 4 units, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it happens to land right on top of coordinate Q, and that's not a problem. I'm going to just put my point there, and I'm going to label it P prime. Now I'm going to go to coordinate Q, and I'm going to start there with the counting. Again, same thing. I'm going to count 3 to the right, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to count 4 units down, 1, 2, 3, 4. Once I've done that, I'll take my point, and then I'll label that Q prime. And finally, I'm going to do the last same thing with my point R. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and down 1, 2, 3, 4. Finally, I'll label that point R prime. Now, once I've done that, I've got all of my points. I've noticed that my triangle has actually slid or translated across the coordinate plane, so it looks like I've done it right. So I'm going to connect my points using lines. You can use a ruler or straight edge for this. And when you're all done, you should have a triangle that's been translated correctly. Now, the next question there says, what's another way to say right 3 units, down 4 units? Well, if I'm looking at my coordinate plane and I'm heading from 0 to the right, I notice that I'm heading towards positive numbers. So I'm gaining or I'm adding as I go to the right. So another way of saying right 3 units is to say plus 3. Now I notice when I'm at 0 and I'm going down, my y coordinates start getting smaller, they start getting negative or larger negative, so I know I'm subtracting as I go down. So my down 4 units, another way to write that is minus 4. Alright, let's take a look at the next one. Let's take a look at practice number 1. Practice number 1 says the pre-image of DEF is shown. Draw a translation, left 5 units and down 2 units, and label the image D prime, E prime, F prime. This is a practice problem, so I want you to pause the video now, do the problem yourself, press play again to see if you are right. How did you do? Were you able to move the triangle correctly? Notice when it talks about translating things to the left and down that your triangle should end up moving left and down. So if it doesn't end up doing that, you know that you've made a mistake. Let's take a look at the next example. Let's take a look at example B. The pre-image GHJ is shown. GHJ is translated horizontally negative 6 units and vertically plus 3 units to yield G prime, H prime, J prime. And it wants us to give the coordinates this time. Now, while it is telling us something different than left and right, it's using the words horizontally and vertically. But we cannot be tricked by these. We already know what they mean. Since we're talking about horizontally negative 6 and vertically positive 3, as we talked about in example A, those give us a hint as to the direction that we need to go. So for example, horizontally means that we're moving left to right, and the negative lets us know that we're going to go left because that's where our negative numbers are. That's where things are going to be getting smaller. That's where we're going to be subtracting. So I'm going to start at letter G, and I'm going to count horizontally left 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now it talks about going vertically 3 units, so I know since I'm adding 3, vertically means going up. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to place my point for G prime right there. So I'm going to take a point, put it right where G prime will be, and bring down G prime to label it. Now I'm going to do the same thing with H. I'm going to again count 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and vertically 3. 1, 2, 3. Again, I'm going to bring my point right down on top of where I finished counting, and I'm going to label that one H prime. Now finally, I'm going to do the same thing with J. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3. And again, I'm going to label my point, and I'm going to call it J prime. It's very important that when you label your points that you use that prime symbol. If you don't, you're just saying that J and J have moved places without any justification for them, and your answer would be marked incorrectly. So let's go ahead and now connect all of the points of our triangle using lines. And if we've done it correctly, then our triangle should appear as though it has moved horizontally, negative, yes it has, and vertically up, yes it has, so it looks like we've done it right. Now we need to give the coordinates G prime, H prime, and J prime. To do that, we can just look on our coordinate plane to see where they ended up. So for example, G prime is at -3, +7, so I'm going to label that -3, +7. H has ended at +2, up 5, so 2, 5. And J is at -2, +2. So I've moved my triangle, I've shown it on the coordinate plane, and I've labeled all of my points, so I've finished my problem. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. Practice problem 2 says the pre-image ABC is shown. The image of ABC is a horizontal translation +4 units and vertically translated +2 units. Give the coordinates of A prime, B prime, C prime. This is a practice problem, so I want you to go ahead and pause the video now, do the problem for yourself, press play again to see if you are right. How did you do? Were you able to move the triangle correctly? Make sure that your triangle matches my triangle on your notes, and that my points match your points on the notes. Let's move on to the next one. Now let's take a look at example C. Remember earlier in the video when I told you that we wouldn't have the opportunity to just count the figure on the coordinate plane? Well, that's happened to us here. They want us to move this parallelogram. They've given us the points, but they haven't been kind enough to put it on the coordinate plane for us. Now, of course, we could just draw the parallelogram onto the coordinate plane and then count like we've done before, but that wouldn't really teach us the mathematical way to move something using translating, so we're going to have to figure that out now for ourselves. So it says parallelogram ABCD has the vertices, and then it's listed all the vertices for us. And it wants us to translate the parallelogram to the right 3 units and down 2 units to yield the parallelogram A prime, B prime, C prime, D prime. And we're going to have to list our points, of course. So, what can we do to figure this out? Well, we can remember from our very first slide that we had a way of talking about going right and left and up and down as either adding or subtracting. So that's what we're going to do here. Since our point is at -5, 3, and we're going to go to the right 3 units and down 2 units, what we're actually going to do is add 3 to our first coordinate, because that's the one that controls our horizontal, and we're going to subtract 2 from our second coordinate, or our y coordinate, because that's the one that controls our vertical or our up and down. So for an example of this, coordinate A is at -5, +3. So notice underneath I've written that we're going to add 3 to go right 3, and underneath the other one I've written -2 because we're going to go down 2. When we do that, -5 plus 3 is going to give me -2, and 3 minus 2 is 1. So my new point for A prime is -2, 1. I didn't have to do any counting, I just did simple addition and subtraction. So let's take a look at coordinate B. So coordinate B is at -1, 3. So again, I'm going to perform the same translation. I'm going to add 3 and subtract 2. So when I do that, -1 plus 3 is going to give me -2, +2, excuse me, and 3 minus 2 is going to give me 1. So I've got 2, 1. C, same thing. I'm going to take my -3, 0 and add 3, -2. -3 and +3 are going to cancel each other out, and 0 minus 2 is going to give me -2. And for the last coordinate, same thing. I've got -7 and 0. I'm going to add 3 and -2. -7 plus 3 is going to give me -4, and 0 minus 2 is -2. So now I've got all of my new points, and I can easily just look at my points and graph them on the coordinate plane. So I'm going to take my first point that's at -2, +1, so -2, +1, and I'm going to call that A prime. Then I've got a point at +2, +1, and again I'm going to call that B prime. I've got a point at 0, -2, and I'm going to call that C prime. And I've got a point at -4, -2, and I'm going to call that D prime. So now I've got my parallelogram. I'm going to use straight lines to connect all of my dots. So I've got my line here, and line here. When I've done that, I've got myself a parallelogram. Perfect. Now I need to make sure that I label all of my image points that it asked me to, so I'm going to just drag my points over here. You're going to have to write on your paper, but I've got A prime, I've got B prime, I've got C prime, and I've got D prime. So notice I was able to figure out how to translate the shape without actually having to do any counting. So I was able to use just basic order of adding and subtracting. All right, let's take a look at the next one. So look at practice number 3. It asks you to move the parallelogram, this time horizontally +1 and vertically -5, and it's listed the points for you there. It hasn't given you the picture on the coordinate plane, but luckily for you, you know how to do that with just math now. So I want you to pause the video, I want you to complete the problem for yourself, and I want you to press play again to see if your answer is correct. How did you do? Were you able to find the parallelogram in the right place? Notice that I've shown my math down below, so you can check to see if your answer was done the way that it was supposed to, and make sure that your points match my points. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the summary page. So we have a few follow-up questions to talk about our translating. So remember, horizontal translating means that you move the figure either to the right or to the left. And a horizontal translation is the change in the x-coordinate, going from left to right. A vertical translation means that you move the figure either up or down, and a vertical translation is a change to the y-coordinate. Now, the image and the pre-image in a translation are congruent. That means the shape looks exactly the same shape and exactly the same size from the pre-image to the image. That there is no change, one isn't bigger than the other, one is not smaller than the other. They're the exact same size, they're just moved either to the left, to the right, up, or down. This concludes our notes on translating. If you really like this video, give us a thumbs up. If you love this video, throw us a sub.